All right.
Did you guys, anybody read the Ted Sarandos memo?
Yeah, this is great. We should definitely jump into this. We talked about the Chappelle performance, Sacks and Friedberg. You hadn't seen it. Did you watch it?
Did you watch it?
Oh, God. What nerds.
You haven't watched it yet?
Oh, my God. You guys are culturally bankrupt.
What were you guys doing this week? Like fucking beakers and like,
Jesus
Sacks,
Christ.
you were just like...
Were you like in like some laboratory doing like SAS
they're
testing?
beakers. They were doing their beakers.
I haven't watched it yet, but I don't need to watch it to know I support it.
Freedom of speech. He's just... Yeah, he doesn't have to click on the link. All right,
there's almost nothing Chappelle could say to make me want to cancel him. I mean, and by the way, I've seen a lot of Chappelle and I love Chappelle. So I think I understand the gist of what he was doing, but I do need to see it still.
All right,
but look, he should not be canceled. It's ridiculous.
I don't think he is.
He's going to survive.
Of course.
Here's my concern.
Goes beyond this. Let me read you from it. So everybody knows the name of the special he did was The Closer. It was released on October 5th. A lot of outcry from GLAAD and advocacy groups and actually people inside of Netflix. There's been some resignations. There have been some people who contribute content to Netflix who are now saying they'll not work with the company. And it's really interesting. Ted Sarandos sent a memo to the entire company on Monday, and this is the second one he sent. And he says, "We know that a number of you have been left angry, disappointed, and hurt by our decision to put Dave Chappelle's latest special on Netflix." Very interesting opening. He's addressing their feelings. This is a masterclass in a memo, because in that first part, he just addresses, "I understand you feel that way. With The Closer, we understand that the concern is not about offensive to some content, but titles which could increase real world harm." So now he's framing their argument as it's not because it's offensive, it's because of real world harm. You've brought this up before, Sacks, the real world harm concept with Apple and Antonio. While some employees disagree, we have a strong belief that content on screen does not directly translate into real world harm. It's not exactly true. We'll get into that. The strongest evidence to support this is that violence on screens has grown hugely over the last 30 years, especially with first-party shooter games, and yet violent crime has fallen significantly in many countries. And so he goes above and beyond just talking about offensive material. Adults can watch violence, assault, and abuse, or enjoy shocking stand-up comedy without it causing them to harm others. Stand-up comedians often expose issues that are uncomfortable because the art by nature is highly provocative. As a leadership team, we do not believe that The Closer is intended to incite hatred or violence against anyone per our sensitive content guidelines. So basically, he says, if you don't like it, change the channel. If you're a customer, you can cancel your subscription. Or if you work here and you don't like it, you don't need to work here. But is this the end of cancel culture? This combined with Brian Armstrong's positioning? Sacks, this is your...
I don't think it's the end of it for the simple reason. Let's assume that this comic had not signed a $60 million deal with Netflix. Let's say he had signed a $60,000 deal, okay?
Or $6 million, yeah.
Or $6 million or whatever. And he didn't have the legions of fans that Dave Chappelle had. Do you think that Sarandos would be making the same decision? I mean, I think that special by a Netflix comedy by Dave Smith would be swept under the rug right now. That would never see the light of day. I think the same thing was true with Joe Rogan and Spotify, right? I mean, Spotify made a $60 million deal with Rogan. $100 million. The employees all protested and Spotify stood tall for Rogan, but they had every economic incentive to do so. I don't completely trust these companies that if it wasn't massively in their bottom line interest, that they would have stood up for free speech. I suspect that if it was,
they would not have.
They would not have. I think we all kind of know that.
He said in the email, Sticks and Stones is one of the most watched, pieces of content we have. And The Closer was like top 4 or 5 in America over like the last few weeks. So there's a huge economic incentive. And Reed Hastings said the same thing when he posted, the other co-CEO, into a group forum, which said, listen, our job is to please our customers. And all this data says is that we've pleased our customer.
Right. And I think in the case of...
That is pretty...
Right. And I think...
To me, that's him putting his foot down and saying, we're going to make the content we want to make.
I don't think it's a principle. I don't think it's a super... Look, I don't want to look past it because I think that it's so rare to get a memo like Sarandos wrote, where he's defending artistic freedom or freedom of speech or what have you. I mean, it's so rare to ever see that I don't want to gainsay it too much. But I also do believe that this sort of special treatment is really reserved for the artists, the creators, like a Chappelle, like a Rogan. They're basically too big to cancel. I mean, these companies have spent too much money on their programs to just summarily cancel them. They also, again, like I said, have legions of fans who would rise up and protest it if they were canceled.
Yeah,
but I don't think these companies would make the same decision for the mid-level creator. And in a sense, Rogan and Chappelle, they're post-economic, right? I mean, they've made so much money that they're free to do what they want, and they've got a big enough audience to protect themselves from these companies. But it's the little creator who's still on their way up, who can never take the kinds of creative risks that Chappelle is taking or that Rogan is taking.
They can take it. They just can't do it on Netflix. But the tone of this to me sounded like a manifesto and the end of the discussion from Dad. Like, we're doing this. If you don't like it, get off the ship. But this is the way the ship is going. That's the way I read it. And I think Spotify did a similar thing with Joe Rogan, to your point, which was, hey, listen, there is some content out there from like Alex Jones or some people who are just conspiracy theorists. They took down those episodes, and Joe Rogan was like, I don't care, I got paid. But yeah, it does feel to me like this is a tipping point when you put Brian Armstrong, Joe Rogan, and Chappelle together, that corporations are going to say, you know what, the mob is fine, you can have your opinion, but your opinion stops where we have to run a business. Friedberg, what are your thoughts?
I think Netflix has a appreciation for artistry, certainly evident by the money they've spent and the product they've put out. And I think good artists and good artistry is, can be provocative. It's designed to make you change your opinion, look at things differently, think about things differently, and be challenged in the norms of, your everyday life. And I think that's important in art in all forms. And that means seeing and being exposed to and being engaged by things that you don't normally get exposed to and engaged by. And I think that's what Chappelle is fantastic at. And I think that's what other great art is great at. And I think that as long as Netflix maintains that ethos, that artistry does that. And the good thing is people appreciate it, and they appreciate that form, and they appreciate being challenged in that way. And I think that as a result, the market will, as Reed Hastings identified, continue to demand it. And as much as some people might be offended, it's the fact that it is offensive that I think makes it good.
So let me ask you,
and I think that they appreciate that.
Let me
Jake, I hope you're right about what this means. I mean, let me be really clear. I mean, I hope it goes down exactly the way that you're saying, because that is what I want to believe is happening. I'm a little bit skeptical that this is a little bit more of a bottom line motive because they got so much money at stake that they can't afford to cancel Chappelle. But I hope you're right that it's a statement of principle, and they will apply that principle to lesser known artists who can't protect themselves as much. And, hopefully this is kind of like, what it reminds me of is the Jon Stewart, the Wuhan lab leak moment, where you had Jon Stewart go on, Colbert show, and he, all of a sudden, he made it okay to talk about the lab leak theory. Yes. It was like, you couldn't talk about it before.
He cracked the Overton window open.
Yes, exactly. And so hopefully Chappelle will do that for this like woke cancellation mob, is to finally get everybody to realize, we can stand